I never thought I'd be that guy, you know. The one who finds out his wife is cheating, the one whose reality crumbles because of infidelity. But here I am, writing this down, hoping that maybe someone out there will find comfort in my story. My name is Jake, and I was married to a beautiful woman named Sarah for almost 5 years. We had met in college, fell in love, and got married shortly after graduation. Life had its ups and downs, but we always managed to hold it together. Or so I thought. It started with little things. Sarah was always the life of the party, but suddenly she became distant. She'd come home late from work, claiming that her upcoming promotion meant extra hours and more responsibility. I wanted to believe her. After all, she had worked hard to climb the corporate ladder, but my gut told me something was off. The way she'd snap at me over trivial things became more frequent. "You left your shoes in the hallway again," became the norm. And when I mentioned dinner plans, she'd roll her eyes like it was an inconvenience. I began to question whether it was me, whether I was somehow the cause of her irritability. Then one evening, while I was cleaning up around the house, I stumbled upon something unexpected. I had gone to the attic to grab some old boxes, and in a dusty corner I found a shoebox filled with love letters. They weren't addressed to me. I felt this wave of nausea wash over me as I opened one. The handwriting was familiar. It was Sarah, but the words were meant for someone else. Flirty lines filled with affection and desire, things I thought were reserved for our relationship. I slammed the box shut, my heart racing. Everything clicked into place. All those late nights, the phone calls she'd take in another room, her dismissiveness. I had tried to ignore the signs, but my heart was too heavy with betrayal now. The next day, I confronted her. I had no idea how to approach it. I kept thinking of those letters, imagining the man on the other side of them. When she came home, I was already sitting at the kitchen table and the air felt thick. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. She looked at me and I could see the flicker of worry in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she replied as if she didn't know. I tossed the letters onto the table like a grenade. "What's wrong, you tell me," I shouted, my composure slipping. The look of shock that crossed her face was almost satisfying, but I felt no joy in it. Instead, it was replaced by a rush of anger. "Jake, I can explain," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think." Of course, it was exactly what I thought. I wasn't born yesterday. As she tried to backpedal, offering up excuses that didn't even make sense, I felt my heart shatter. She claimed it was just a phase, that she was unhappy, and that it was my fault for not noticing sooner. The audacity. Listening to her attempt to justify her actions made me feel sick. I never considered myself a jealous person, but the thought of her with another man twisted something inside me. It was all so surreal. My mind was racing, filled with questions. Who was he? When did this start? Did I really know her at all? The anger I felt morphed into a deep, gnawing sadness. I felt betrayed by someone I had trusted so deeply. I didn't know how to react. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel the pain I was experiencing. But instead I sat there, staring at her with a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. As she continued to make excuses, I realized that my marriage was standing on the brink of an abyss. This was it. My life was about to change dramatically, whether I liked it or not. In the midst of her rambling, I could see that she was scared, but it was a fear of getting caught, not a fear of hurting me. That realization cut deeper than any knife. I felt a surge of clarity amidst the chaos. I had to figure out what I wanted from this moment forward. I could either choose to forgive and try to salvage what was left, or I could start the process of letting her go. Both options felt heavy on my heart. As much as I wanted to scream and throw her out, I also felt an unsettling calm wash over me. This was my life. My decision. I had to find a way to reclaim the narrative. I had a long road ahead, filled with choices and consequences, but I was determined to traverse it with my head held high. In the days following our confrontation, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. The initial shock of discovering Sarah's betrayal settled into a simmering anger and a profound sadness that clung to me like a heavy fog. I went through the motions at work, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying her excuses and those damn letters over and over again. Every glance at her empty chair at the dinner table felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I kept thinking, how could she do this to us? I decided to take a few days off to clear my head. I'd always found solace in nature, so I headed to a nearby hiking trail that I used to frequent when I needed to think. The fresh air, the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze, these things usually help soothe my thoughts, but this time I felt like I was trudging through quicksand. As I walked, I couldn't help but replay every moment of our relationship. The laughter, the tiny arguments over nothing, the love we had built together, it all felt like a cruel joke now. It wasn't until I reached a secluded overlook that my mind began to settle. I sat on a rock, staring out at the horizon, and I let the tears flow freely. I thought about the life we envisioned together, dreams of buying a house, starting a family, growing old together. It felt so distant now, like a dream I'd never wake up from. I began to realize that I'd put her on a pedestal, believing she was above making such a devastating mistake. But people are fallible, and love doesn't make anyone immune to temptation. As I sat there, I knew I had to make a decision. I wasn't going to let her infidelity define me or our relationship. I might have loved Sarah deeply, but I also had to acknowledge that maybe I had ignored signs of her unhappiness. It was a painful realization, but I needed to accept it to move forward. I was determined not to be the victim in this situation. I could either let anger consume me or use it as fuel to reclaim my life. My first step was to gather more information about her affair. I felt like a detective, going through her phone while she was in the shower, lurking around her social media accounts, trying to piece together the fragments of her betrayal. Each message I read and each photo I scrolled through made it harder to breathe. I found flirty exchanges that went beyond friendship, and the realization that this had been going on longer than I'd wanted to believe gnawed at me. But there was one thing that struck me the hardest. This wasn't just about Sarah's infidelity. It was about me finding closure and understanding. I needed to confront not only her but also the reality of our relationship. So, with a heavy heart, I decided to confront her again. I had questions that needed answers, questions about the man she was seeing and what led to this point. The next night, I waited for her to come home. I had already rehearsed what I wanted to say a dozen times in my head. I wanted to approach her calmly, but I also needed her to understand the weight of her actions. When she finally walked through the door, I could see that she had changed her clothes and looked like she had just come from an event. My gut twisted again. She looked beautiful, and it made my heart ache even more. "Jake, you're up late," she said, a bit too casually for my taste. I could see she was nervous, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Yeah, I've been thinking," I replied, my tone steady. "We need to talk again." I gestured for her to sit down. As she took a seat, I noticed the defiance in her posture. She crossed her arms, preparing for a fight. "I thought we were done with that discussion," she said, her voice laced with annoyance. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "No, Sarah, we're not done. I need to know who he is. I need to know why you thought it was okay to throw everything we built away. This isn't just about what you did, it's about understanding what led you to this." Her expression shifted from defensive to panicked, and I watched as she visibly crumbled under the pressure of my questions. I didn't mean for it to happen," she stammered. "It was just a fling, a moment of weakness. I didn't know how to talk to you, and I felt so lost." "Lost? You didn't think to talk to your husband, the one person who loves you. Instead, you decided to cheat." My voice was rising, and I could feel the anger bubbling back up. "What did he give you that I couldn't?" She hesitated, and for a moment I thought she might actually tell me the truth. He listened to me. He made me feel alive again." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the words struck me like a punch to the gut. "So you found a way to feel alive in the arms of another man." I felt sick. "How could you do this to me, to us?" "I made a mistake, Jake," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, I don't want to lose you. We can work through this." The desperation in her eyes wasn't enough to soften my heart. I realized then that I didn't want to be the guy who forgave and forgot. I needed to put myself first for once. I didn't have to fight for a relationship that she no longer valued. As the silence stretched between us, a wave of clarity washed over me. I had given her my all, but she had chosen to betray that love. This was no longer a partnership. It was a power imbalance, and I wouldn't allow that to continue. I was done playing the fool. I stood up, feeling a sense of resolution wash over me. I think we need some time apart, Sarah. I need to figure out what I want and whether there's anything left to salvage between us. Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and realization. Wait, you can't just leave. I'll change, I promise. But I was already walking away. It was time for me to reclaim my life. I had to step out of the shadows of her betrayal and into the light of a new beginning, whatever that might look like. The road ahead was unclear, but for the first time since discovering her affair, I felt a sense of empowerment. The days that followed my confrontation with Sarah were some of the most challenging I had ever faced. I moved into the guest room to give us both space, but the walls felt like they were closing in. I was surrounded by our shared memories, a constant reminder of what I had lost. The laughter that once filled our home was replaced by an eerie silence, and every creak of the floorboards echoed my emotional turmoil. I spent a lot of my time alone, reflecting on our relationship and what had gone wrong. I read self-help books, sought advice online, and even talked to a few close friends who had been through similar situations. While some encouraged me to fight for my marriage, others said I deserved better, that I should walk away. I felt torn, caught between wanting to salvage what little was left of our love and recognizing that she had crossed a line I wasn't sure could be uncrossed. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over everything, and I could hear the sounds of laughter and joy from families enjoying dinner together. It made my heart ache even more. I longed for that warmth and comfort again, but every time I thought of Sarah, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. It was as if my heart was caught in a perpetual tug-of-war. As I walked, I stumbled upon a local cafe. The inviting aroma of coffee wafted through the air, and I felt an urge to sit down and gather my thoughts. I ordered a black coffee and settled into a quiet corner. As I sipped my drink, I noticed a couple at the table next to me, lost in each other's eyes, whispering sweet nothings. I felt a pang of longing, a longing for honesty, loyalty, and genuine affection. Suddenly my phone buzzed, breaking my reverie. It was a message from Sarah. "Can we talk? I'm sorry for everything. I miss you." The simplicity of her words sent my mind racing. Did she truly mean it, or was she just trying to ease her guilt? I hesitated before responding, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore her entirely, to shut her out completely, but another part of me yearned for clarity, for closure. I finally replied, "I'm not sure what there is to talk about, Sarah. You made your choices." I finished my coffee and left the cafe, my mind swirling with thoughts. I knew I had to be strong, but the emotional stakes were high. The moment I stepped back into the house, I could feel the tension in the air. It was palpable. She was in the living room, her eyes darting back and forth between the television and the floor, clearly waiting for me to say something. "Hey," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my expression neutral. I didn't want her to see how torn I was feeling inside. "Did you get my message?" she asked, her eyes pleading for a connection. "I did," I responded, crossing my arms. "Why do you want to talk?" She took a deep breath as if gathering her thoughts. "Because I want to explain. I've been doing a lot of reflecting and I realize how much I've hurt you. I never wanted it to get this far." I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. On one hand, I appreciated her desire to communicate, but on the other, it felt insincere. "Explain what exactly, how you decided to cheat on your husband." I had to fight the urge to raise my voice. "No, that's not it," she said, her frustration evident. I was unhappy, Jake. I didn't know how to express that. I thought I could find what I was missing with someone else, but I see now how wrong that was." "Unhappy?" I echoed, my voice tinged with disbelief. "That's the reason you went out and slept with another guy. Why couldn't you just talk to me?" I would have listened. I was scared. She burst out, her eyes glistening with tears. "I thought you'd judge me or think I was being dramatic. I didn't know how to approach you with my feelings. Scared, you chose to betray me instead of communicating." I shook my head, feeling the anger bubble back to the surface. "You don't get to play the victim here, Sarah. You made your choices." She looked down at her hands and I could see the shame wash over her. I know I messed up. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want a chance to show you that I can make things right. I want to win you back. My heart raced at her words. Part of me wanted to believe that she could change, that we could find a way back to each other. But another part of me knew that trust had been shattered and that rebuilding it wouldn't be easy. And how do you plan to do that? I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. I swear to you, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy. I'll be open and honest about everything. I want to be better, not just for us, but for myself too, she admitted, her voice trembling. As I listened to her, I felt a surge of hope mixed with skepticism. Could she really change? Could we somehow navigate through this mess? But beneath that hope lay the reality of our situation. The love I once felt for her was tainted by betrayal. I don't know, Sarah. It's going to take more than words to fix this, I said, my resolve softening just a fraction. I need time to think. Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded, and I could see the desperation in her expression. Please, just give me a chance. I'll show you that I mean it. I turned away, needing to gather my thoughts. I felt the enormous weight of the decision ahead of me. Could I still find a way to make this work, or was I destined to walk away? Either way, I knew I had to set boundaries. I wasn't going to let her manipulate my feelings or my choices. I decided to give myself a few days to really think things through. I needed to sort out the chaos in my mind and heart before I could even consider what the future might hold. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. I had taken control of my situation, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt empowered. Whatever decision I made next, it would be for me. It was time to prioritize my own happiness, with or without her. The next few days were an emotional roller coaster. I spent time reflecting on everything that had transpired, weighing my options, and trying to decide what I truly wanted. I kept myself busy with work and hit the gym more often than usual, trying to channel my anger and frustration into something productive. But when I was alone, the doubts crept back in. Could I really forgive Sarah? Would I ever trust her again? One afternoon, as I was heading home from work, I decided to stop by a park that we used to frequent. It was a place filled with memories, a spot where we had shared countless picnics and heart-to-heart talks. As I walked through the familiar paths, I couldn't help but feel a mix of nostalgia and sorrow. I remembered the laughter and love we had once shared, and it felt like a dagger to my heart. It was then that I realized something crucial. While I loved her, I also loved myself. The relationship had become so intertwined with my identity that I had overlooked my own happiness for too long. I needed to focus on what I wanted and whether I could ever see a future with Sarah. A few days later, I decided it was time to have another serious conversation with Sarah. I wanted to hear her out, but I also needed to establish some ground rules. I invited her to meet me at a local coffee shop, a neutral ground. As I sat at a small table, I felt the butterflies of anticipation and anxiety twist in my stomach. When she arrived, I could see the hope in her eyes. She had dressed up, looking especially radiant, but I knew that appearances could be deceiving. I offered her a small smile as she sat down, but I could sense the tension radiating between us. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Of course, Jake. I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation," she replied, her fingers fidgeting nervously with the edge of the table. "I just want to show you how committed I am to making this work." I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the conversation ahead. "I need you to be honest with me, Sarah. No more excuses or half-truths. I want to know everything about your affair, the who, the how, and why it happened." She hesitated but eventually nodded. "Okay, I can do that. Start with who," I prompted. She swallowed hard. "His name is Mark. He's a coworker. We started talking a lot at work, and I guess I just started to confide in him. I was feeling neglected, and it turned into something more. It was stupid and reckless. I thought he could fill the void, but I see now how wrong I was." I felt a wave of anger wash over me at the mention of his name. "And you thought a fling would fix your unhappiness with me. You betrayed our marriage over a conversation." "I know it sounds ridiculous," she replied, tears welling in her eyes, "but I didn't see it that way at the time. I got swept up in the attention he gave me, the way he made me feel special. I thought I could keep it a secret, but it spiraled out of control. I sat back, letting her words sink in. You didn't think about how this would affect us. You didn't think about me or our vows. I thought I could fix everything before it got too far. I thought I could just end it after a few weeks. But then I realized I was in too deep. She admitted, her voice quivering. I never meant to hurt you, Jake. Intentions don't matter when the damage is done, Sarah, I said, my heart aching at the pain in her eyes. You have to understand that trust is built over time, but it can be shattered in an instant. You've broken something between us that may never be fixed. I know, she said, a sob escaping her lips. And I'm so sorry. I want to work on us to make things right. But I also know I can't expect you to forgive me overnight. I'll do whatever it takes to regain your trust. I felt a spark of hope flicker in my chest, but I also reminded myself not to let it blind me. It's going to take time. I can't rush into anything, and I won't pretend that everything is okay when it's not. I need to see real change, not just words. I promise you, I'll be open and honest from now on. I'll share my feelings, and I won't hide anything from you. I want to go to counseling, too. I want to understand why I made those choices, she said, desperation lacing her voice. Counseling sounds like a good idea, I replied, nodding. But I also need to take care of myself. I need time to think about whether I even want to continue this relationship. I could see the devastation in her eyes, and it pained me to see her like this, but I had to be strong. I wasn't just doing this for her, I was doing it for me. Fine, she whispered, wiping away her tears. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. As we sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressed down on us. I knew it wouldn't be easy to rebuild what had been lost, but I also knew that I had to be honest with myself about what I wanted. Would I be able to forgive her and move forward? Or would I eventually choose to walk away from the pain? As I left the cafe that day, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was still hurt, still angry, but I also felt empowered. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life and my happiness. It was up to me to determine what that meant moving forward, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control of my destiny. The next few weeks unfolded like a slow-moving train wreck. Sarah and I navigated through awkward conversations and tense silences, each of us trying to find our footing in this new reality. She was committed to going to counseling, and I agreed to join her for a few sessions, but the trust between us had been severed, and every session felt like a step into the unknown for me. Attending therapy sessions with Sarah was both enlightening and painful. Our therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Roberts, encouraged us to open up about our feelings. I found myself struggling to articulate the depth of my hurt, but Sarah was more than willing to share her side of the story, her insecurities, her feelings of neglect. Every time she spoke, I could feel my resentment churn inside me, a toxic cocktail of anger and sadness. Why didn't you just talk to me, Sarah? I'd often find myself asking during our sessions. You had so many opportunities to be honest, to confront whatever it was that you were feeling. I know, she would exclaim, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was scared that you would dismiss me or that you would get angry. I didn't want to fight. I thought cheating would be easier, a way to escape. But now I see it was the biggest mistake of my life. Dr. Roberts would guide us through these discussions, helping us unpack the layers of our relationship. It was a process, one that required vulnerability and honesty, but every time I looked at Sarah, I felt the weight of her betrayal. I had to remind myself that healing takes time and our journey wouldn't be linear. One evening, after a particularly grueling therapy session, Sarah suggested we try to reconnect outside of the therapy room. Let's go for dinner, she proposed, her voice tentative. Somewhere nice like we used to do. I hesitated. The idea of sharing a meal with her felt strange, almost foreign, but part of me longed for the intimacy we used to share. Okay, I finally agreed. But let's keep it casual. We went to a small Italian restaurant that had once been our favorite date spot, the ambience still warm and inviting. As we sat at a corner table, I could see the nervousness in her eyes. She fidgeted with her napkin, glancing up at me as if searching for a sign that things were getting better. Is this okay? She asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I just thought maybe dinner could help us reconnect. I sighed, trying to find the right words. It's fine. I don't know if we can go back to how things were. Not yet. I get that, she replied, her eyes glistening. But I want to try. I want to show you that I care about you and our future. I'm committed to making this work, Jake. As we shared a meal, I found myself reminiscing about the good times, laughter over shared plates, sweet conversations that flowed easily. But no matter how hard I tried, the shadow of her betrayal loomed over us, casting a pall over every moment. Jake, can we talk about us? She said, breaking through my thoughts. I've been thinking a lot about our future. I know it seems bleak right now, but I believe we can rebuild. I looked at her, searching for sincerity. Do you really think we can? You broke my trust, Sarah. It's not just something we can wave away with a nice dinner. I know, she said, desperation creeping into her voice again, but I really want to prove to you that I'm worth the effort. I'll do anything, counseling, date nights, whatever it takes. I just need you to meet me halfway. I felt torn. Part of me still cared deeply for her. The memories we shared were hard to let go of. But another part of me screamed that I couldn't keep going back to the same well of pain. It's not just about your willingness to change. I need to see real actions, real commitments. What does that look like for you? I'll be more open about my feelings. I won't shy away from hard conversations. I'll make sure you know that you're my priority, she replied earnestly. I studied her face for a moment, looking for any hint of deceit, but all I saw was raw vulnerability. Okay, but I need to know that I can trust you again. This means no secrets. If there's something bothering you, you have to tell me. I promise, she said, her voice steady. No more hiding. I'll be transparent about everything. I want to build a future with you, but I know it starts with rebuilding our foundation. We finished dinner, and as we walked back to the car, I felt a slight shift within me. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to each other. But I also knew that I needed to take things slowly, to watch her actions rather than simply listen to her words. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself juggling my feelings. I wanted to believe in our ability to heal, but I was still haunted by the betrayal. We continued to attend therapy, where the sessions became increasingly raw and revealing. One day, I decided to confront Sarah about how her affair had impacted me personally. It was a tough discussion, but I felt it was necessary for my own healing. I need you to understand how deeply this hurt me, I said during one of our sessions. I feel inadequate, like I failed somewhere. I've spent countless nights questioning my worth. I never wanted you to feel that way, Sarah responded, her voice breaking. I realize now that my actions weren't just a reflection of my unhappiness. They caused you pain, and I hate that I did that to you. Do you understand the gravity of your actions? I pressed. Trust isn't just built, it's earned and requires consistency. I can't just forget what you did. I know, she said, tears streaming down her face. And I'm willing to do the work to earn that trust back. I just need you to give me a chance. It was a long, hard road, and there were good days and bad days. I started to feel a sense of hope when Sarah began to demonstrate real commitment. She was more present, more engaged in our conversations. She reached out more often, and she made an effort to be transparent about her feelings. But every time I began to feel comfortable, a memory of the betrayal would sneak back in, reminding me of how fragile our relationship had become. I realized that while I wanted to forgive her, I also needed to forgive myself for allowing this to happen. As I sat in my room one evening, reflecting on everything I had experienced, I made a decision. I would continue to work on our relationship, but I would also prioritize my own healing. I needed to reclaim my sense of self, to find my own happiness outside of Sarah. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but there was a flicker of light at the end of the tunnel. I was no longer just a victim of circumstance. I was a survivor, determined to forge my own path, whatever that might look like. As I continued to navigate this complex terrain of rebuilding trust and healing, I found myself gaining a deeper understanding of not only Sarah, but also of my own heart. The road wasn't linear, and there were days when I felt overwhelmed. I'd often wake up in the middle of the night, my mind racing, wondering if I was making the right decision or if I was simply clinging to remnants of what once was. One evening, after a particularly exhausting couple of weeks, Sarah suggested we take a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods, a place we had visited before when things were good between us. It felt like a bold move, but part of me was intrigued. I wanted to see if we could create new memories to overshadow the painful ones. The drive out there was filled with an awkward mix of nostalgia and tension. We played our favorite songs, and for a moment, it felt like the weight of our past was lifting, but I also kept my guard up. When we arrived at the cabin, the air was crisp, and the surroundings were beautiful. The trees were vibrant, and the peace of nature enveloped us. As we settled in, Sarah seemed more relaxed than I had seen her in a long time. We cooked dinner together, laughing over silly mishaps in the kitchen that reminded us of our early days. It was nice, almost magical, but there was still an underlying tension that I couldn't quite shake. That night, as we sat by the fireplace, I knew we needed to have a serious conversation. "Sarah, I want to talk about our future," I began, my heart pounding. "I need to know what you envision for us moving forward." She looked at me, her expression earnest. "I want to rebuild what we had, but I know it's going to take time and commitment. I want to create a life together, one built on honesty and mutual respect." "Honesty is key," I agreed. "But I also need to understand how we're going to prevent what happened from happening again. I can't go through this pain again." "I promise I'll communicate better," she said, her voice steady. "If I'm ever feeling unhappy or neglected, I'll come to you first. I want to be proactive instead of reactive." As we talked, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to thaw. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward for us. I realized that while I would always carry the scars of her betrayal, healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant moving forward together with intent. The next day, we spent our time hiking and reconnecting with nature. Each step felt like a step toward healing, and I could see the spark of joy returning to Sarah's eyes. By the end of the day, we were both exhausted but exhilarated. As the sun began to set, we found ourselves standing on a cliff overlooking a breathtaking view of the valley below. The colors of the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, and for a moment everything felt perfect. "Jake," Sarah said, turning to me, "I know this has been a journey filled with pain, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I believe in us." I looked at her, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "I want to believe in us too," I replied. "But it's going to take work. I need to see you take action, not just hear the words." "I understand," she said, tears glistening in her eyes, "and I'm ready to put in that effort, I promise." As we stood there, I felt a newfound sense of hope. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I had once envisioned, but it was a foundation we could build upon, one that acknowledged our past but also embraced the possibility of a brighter future. When we returned home, I decided to take things one step at a time. We continued our therapy, focusing on rebuilding the layers of trust. I found strength in setting boundaries and expressing my needs while also being open to her feelings and concerns. Over the next months, I noticed a significant change in our dynamic. Sarah was more committed than ever, doing little things to show her love, small notes left for me, surprise dates, and genuine conversations. I began to feel that we were building a new relationship, one that was stronger and more honest than before. Eventually, I found myself forgiving her, not just to absolve her of guilt, but for my own peace of mind. Forgiveness became a process, something I practiced each day as I reminded myself that we were both human, capable of mistakes and growth. As I reflect on this journey, I realize that every relationship faces challenges, but it's how we respond to those challenges that defines us. I learned that love is not just about the good times, it's also about weathering the storms together, supporting one another through thick and thin. I wouldn't say everything was perfect, but I felt a renewed sense of companionship with Sarah. We were no longer the same couple we once were. We were evolving, learning, and growing together. To anyone going through a similar experience, I'd say this: trust your instincts, prioritize your own well-being, and remember that healing is a journey, not a destination. It's okay to take the time you need to figure out what you want and whether it's possible to rebuild. Surround yourself with support, be honest with each other, and never underestimate the power of communication. Life is full of unexpected turns, and while I can't predict what the future holds, I know that I'm ready to embrace it, whatever it may be.